Jonathan Lee Riches Investigates. I am covering the tragedy out of Moscow, Idaho. Let's talk about Bryan Kohberger's phone being in Johnson, Idaho on November 13th, 2022 in the late afternoon hours going towards the early evening hours. Why was Bryan Kohberger's phone in Johnson, Idaho? And most likely, Bryan was with his phone. According to the affidavit of probable cause, Bryan's phone was in Johnson. Check it out. Reading the affidavit of probable cause against Bryan Kohberger, noticed this. Additional analysis of records for the 8458 phone, which is Bryan Kohberger's phone, indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to Johnson, Idaho. Johnson, Idaho. The 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being in the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. They're talking about on November 13th, 2022, phone pinged around Johnson, Idaho, 5:32 p.m., 5:36 p.m. Johnson, Idaho, which is east of Lewiston, Idaho. And then from 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., nothing. Phone went dark, off the grid, vanished. Just like how Bryan Kohberger's phone vanished while in Moscow, Idaho. What do you think? Johnson, Idaho. Johnson, Idaho is quite a distance from Moscow. And Clarkston, Washington, Lewiston, Idaho. It's quite a distance, 100 miles. Check it out. So this is Google Maps. I got 3 locations here. Moscow, Idaho. I have Clarkston, Washington. And I have Johnson, Idaho. And you could see if the full trip, 109 miles. Now, on the morning of the 13th, according to the affidavit of probable cause, Bryan's phone pinged in Moscow around 9-ish in the morning. And then around noon, his phone pinged in Clarkston, Washington. Clarkston, Washington, right across the border of Idaho, right across from Lewiston, Idaho. Then later on, 5:30-ish, his phone pinged in Johnson, Idaho. And then from 5:30-ish to 8:30-ish, it vanished. What was he doing out here in Johnson? Why was his phone out here? Now, could be a tower here. He could have been in Pierce, Hollywood, headquarters, WIPE, W-E-I-P-P-E. This road here, it looks like this is the only road that goes into the area, Main Road 11. But then, once you get up here, it disappears. Like there's nothing left. Like you can't really go farther. But why was he out here? Why was his phone out here? And why did it just stop? Why did he just turn off or go into airplane mode or vanished from 5:30-ish to 8:30-ish? Why? What's here? Was he disposing the murder weapon in this area? Was he picking another victim? Was he stalking and preying possibly some other victim or some other criminal act that he was doing, akin to what happened in Moscow when his phone vanished and went off during the early morning hours of the 13th? From the time he was in Pullman, what do you think? 109 miles out of the way. And then once here, eventually makes his way back to Pullman. Back to Pullman. What's your thoughts? Now, I made a video about Bryan Kohberger being in Clarkston, Washington on the afternoon of November 13th, 2022, a little bit after 12 p.m. If you haven't watched that video, please watch. I talk about areas where Bryan was at, seen, most likely in Clarkston. Also the Snake River, and the theory about the murder weapon maybe being thrown into the Snake River. But let's talk about Johnson, Idaho. Johnson, Idaho. If you Google Johnson, Idaho, you don't really get much information about Johnson, Idaho. If you Google Johnson, Idaho, there isn't really anything about Johnson, Idaho. Look, I mean, they're talking about other things with the name Johnson, but you don't really see anything about Johnson, Idaho. Like, it's a very, very so small. It doesn't have a Wikipedia page. It doesn't have anything about it. It doesn't have, like, look, Google Images, Johnson, Idaho, nothing. They're just talking about some other guy named Johnson. Like, there's nothing in Johnson. So why was Bryan Kohberger's phone in Johnson, Idaho around 5:30 p.m. on the 13th? What was his purpose of going out there, and why was his phone shut off between 5:30-ish and 8:30 p.m.? What's going on here? Nothing, matter of fact. Nothing at all. It's very small area. I doubt they even have a post office. Can't find anything about homes in that area. Why was he there? Why was he there? The only conclusion that I have is to dispose the possible murder weapon or pick another victim, because the phone went off. His phone went off a little bit after 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It's vanished. Similar to what happened in Moscow during the early morning hours of November 13th. Bryan's phone just went gone and then resurfaced later once outside Moscow. Was he picking another victim in Johnson? Did Bryan have an eye on someone in Johnson that he wanted to also do some criminal acts on? I want to know what you think. Subscribe to my channel, like, hit the notification button. Still unknown. A lot of unanswered questions, but we're digging, we're finding. We want to get the truth out there. If you know any information about this and you want to share, please comment. Please comment. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts, your theories on why Bryan's phone was in Johnson, and assuming Bryan was with his phone. Was somebody with Bryan? Was anyone with Bryan that day? Because remember, Bryan said when he got arrested, has anyone else been arrested, or did you catch anybody else? A lot of speculation that he had an accomplice. Everyone be safe. God bless. Justice for the community. Justice for the victims and their family. I'll be posting more videos soon. Stay tuned.